Hey guys, so this is the model for our math lesson 8.1, and there's a couple things that you are going to need in order to work on this lesson. So in your packet, you're going to need this math journal page. It tells us the date up here, May 4th, 2020. It says measuring to the nearest half quarter inch, and then the page is 252. You also are going to need this page that has the rulers on it. For today, we're going to be cutting out ruler A. So go ahead, stop this video, and you're going to cut out ruler A. All right, so I have just finished cutting out my ruler, and I'm going to be looking at this ruler to figure out how to measure with fourths. Now, I don't see any fourths on this ruler, but we're going to use what we know about fractions to help us to measure to the nearest fourth. So we know that fractions are equal parts of a whole, and on my ruler, I can see that we have 1 whole inch, 2 whole inches, 3 whole inches, 4 whole inches, 5 whole inches, 6 whole inches, 7 whole inches, and then this one does have 8 whole inches. For what we're going to do, you're going to need a pencil, and I want you to take your ruler, and I'm going to zoom in really close on mine so that you can see what it is that we're doing. So this distance from 0 to 1 is 1 whole inch. If I were to break it in half, and then break each side into half, I am going to now have 4 equal groups. So if I were to think about it, this is 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups, and then 4 equal groups becomes the 1 whole. So I want to think about labeling each of these marks on my ruler, cutting them into fourths. So this is 1/4. If we know what we know about our equivalent fractions, we know that 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2, and this ruler already has 1/2 on there. And then this is 3/4. And when I get to 1, I can write 4/4 because I know that 1 whole is 4/4, or 4/4 is equivalent to 1 whole. So I now have my ruler split into fourths. I'm going to continue going down my ruler. And remember, starting at 1 to 2, that is 1 whole. They already have my marks split into fourths. So this is 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4. So I've got equivalent pieces or equal pieces for 1 whole. I made a whole new set of equal pieces for this whole. I'm just going to keep going down the line and doing the same thing. You're going to mark all of your quarter inches on your ruler. So this is 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4. I'm going to go to the next one. So between 3 and 4, that is 1 whole. So I'm going to split this whole into 4 equal groups because I'm measuring in fourths. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and then 4/4, or 1 whole. Going now between 4 and 5, that is 1 whole. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and then 4/4. Now I'm going to make my marks for this whole inch between 5 and 6. That's 1 whole inch. So I'm splitting that inch into 4 equal parts. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. Now we have our ruler, and we know that on rulers, typically what we see is the whole numbers. I have a ruler right here that I can show you guys. On this ruler, we have the whole inches. So from 1 to 2, that's a whole inch. But look at all of these extra lines here. rulers are broken down to the 16th of an inch, which is way more than we need to know. We just need to know to the nearest quarter. So if I'm looking at a ruler, I'm just going to split one. So here's my half. I'm going to go to my half again and my half again. So I've got 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. We've got all of those extra lines in there that we kind of just have to forget about for right now. So we're going to be using this ruler that we already marked up the fourths to measure our distances on our page. So I want you to get out your math journal page, and we're going to look at number 1. And I want to set my ruler not on the end of the ruler. Sometimes rulers go at the end. This one has a 0 that's right there. So I'm going to set my 0 right on the end of my line that's on the page, and I'm going to count out and see how long this is. Now, I could count all of my fourths, but I want to know how many inches it is. So I'm going to kind of use my pen and I'm going to trace down. Here's 1 whole inch. Here's 2 whole inches. Here's 3. But my line doesn't quite get to 3 inches. So I know that I have 2 whole inches. So I'm going to put on my answer that it is 2 whole inches, but then I have part of an inch. So I have to use a fraction to label this part of the inch. And this line is closest to the 3/4 right here. So my line is 2 whole inches and 3/4 of an inch. So when I write it, I always like to write it like this: big 2, and then my fraction's going to be the same size as my 2. So my numerator and denominator are smaller because they're going to be the same size as my big 2. So this is 2 3/4 of an inch. Looking at number 2, I can see that I'm starting at 0. My line goes all the way out, and I'm going to look to see my holes first. So I'm going to say 1 hole, 2 whole inches, 3 whole inches, 4 whole inches, and then my line stops. So actually, this line is 4 inches. Now, my directions say to measure to the nearest fourth, but I'm going to write down 4 as my answer because it is 4 inches. But remember, when we were counting our inches and when we were counting by quarter inches, remember, 4 equals a number of fourths, right? 1 whole is 4/4. So even though it doesn't have a fourth in as a fraction, this 4 is equal to 16/4. And I could actually count it out. So 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, 5/4, 6/4, 7/4, 8/4, 9/4, 10/4, 11/4, 12/4, 13/4, 13/4, 15/4, 16/4. So when we go all the way out, we know that this is 16/4. And we've talked about it before. 16 divided by 4 equals this whole fourths, the whole answer of 4 inches. So number 2 is about 4 inches. When we measure, we say about 4 inches because sometimes it might not be exactly. Like on number 2 or number 1, it wasn't exactly on the 3/4. It was a little bit past it. So we say about 2 3/4 inch. All right, for number 3, I'm going to set it on my paper and I'm going to look for my holes. So I'm going to go 1 hole, 2 holes. It doesn't go to 3 holes. So I know I have at least 2 whole inches, but I want to look and see how many parts of an inch I have. So my line's at 0, and I'm going to go out here and I see that this is 2/4. So it is 2 2/4 of an inch. And I know that 2/4 is an equivalent fraction to 1/2, so I can also write it as 2 1/2. So that is how you measure using this ruler, how you measure to the nearest fourth.